Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and my fellow Forest fanatic from across the Atlantic, Richard Spray. I'm in that feel-good factor music zone at the moment, guys. You're going to have to bear with me. Richard, how are you?
In a feel-good factor as well. Shocker, right? Yeah, fantastic. Looking forward to this weekend. Can't
Excellent.
wait to pummel Luton.
Well, high-flying Nottingham Forest take a break from their Premier League title challenge this weekend as they welcome lowly Championship side Luton Town to the City Ground for an FA Cup third round tie. You remember Luton, don't you? That plucky little club with the funny little ground where Edna and Maureen can watch the action while sipping their tea in their dining room. The team who found themselves battling to stay in the top flight last season, winning the hearts of many as they picked up 7 points from their last 16 Premier League matches before getting relegated officially on the last day of the season. But boy, what a fight they put up, eh? While it looks like they might be also going down again as they languish in 20th place in the Championship, with news circling that their manager Rob Edwards is about to depart. Forest will look to continue their winning streak while also giving some fringe players some valuable game time. It's match preview, so that means, of course, we have with us the Statman Danscape and Raf, the Random Pundits. I'll let you guys decide which one's Mork and which one's Mindy. Dan, how are you, sir?
Good, thank you. Very good. I was just looking at the plucky old Luton. I think since we drew with them in that 1-1 game, they've won 29 points, and we've got 51 points since then in a totally different league.
Well, there you go.
Nowhere near us now.
Raf, I know that you've had an important appointment this morning, and you're here with us still. How are you feeling? And I hope you can get through this.
Nanu. Yeah, no, I am. This side of my face is I can't feel anything whatsoever. So if I do dribble, apologies. It's not like an early stage of the rest of my life in my later years and everything else as well. But yeah, no, all good, all fighting fit, and even a drill being taken to me cannot take the sheen off the absolute buzz at the moment. The bonkers news, Twitter feed going mental. You've got Louise that might be joining us. We might literally just be winning the league as well. Pundits are all coming round to it. There's discussion now of are we in the title race? I mean, I can't believe the fact this is on mainstream pundits' mouths at the moment. We're in an alternative universe at the moment. It's amazing.
We are indeed, I think. And for those that didn't quite catch that, Dan, Raf has been to the dentist this morning. So all that drilling he's talking about is in the mouth area, and they sometimes have strong drugs on the after effect. Don't forget to join in with us in the comments. Let us know that you are here. We will try and give shout outs where we can. If you're tuning into this episode after we finish the live, either on Apple or Spotify, or maybe on the YouTube playback, we thank you for joining us as well, of course. Right. I popped out some tweets and some info that I was, very grateful to be invited to give a bit of an interview on the New Zealand radio channel Sports Nation. So I chatted to Stephen McIver last night, and it went out live a few hours later in New Zealand because they wanted to obviously get a bit of a chat about Chris Wood. Here's a little clip from that interview.
Unbelievable. This guy, he got the hat-trick away at Newcastle, Langer on the wing, has assisted him over the last 365 days 7 times. It's just been unbelievable, Stephen. We've got so carried away. We are completely and utterly in love with Chris Wood.
So,
this guy looks like a...
So I'll only play you a little bit of a snippet. I mean, my throat, you can hear, is not in a great condition. It wasn't in a great condition last night. But I've put the link in the bio to this episode. It's on Spotify, that clip. You can go and grab it. It's just me chatting with Stephen about Chris Wood, about Forest. And of course, in true Greg fashion, I'm getting quite carried away by the end of it. And so, as Raf says, we're all on the crest of a wave talking about whether Forest will win a title challenge or not. We certainly think we might be.
As ever, we're super grateful for your support. Please hit like and subscribe. Or if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, you can follow us to be sure to never miss a Talking Reds episode.
Please do like and subscribe. Okay, right. So we're going to get into the match that's coming up at the City Ground against Luton in the first half of today's show. And then we'll do a few other little bits thereafter. So, Richard, coming over to you. So, look, I mean, you know, we get a break from the Premier League and I'm not quite sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. We've just won 6 in a row. And as much as I'm digging Luton in my opening and as much as, you know, they were a bit of a rival for us last season, whether we like it or not. I mean, we were going head to head with them on the relegation stakes. This has still got all the hallmarks of a potential banana skin, you know. So what are your general thoughts going into this one at the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, based off of how we played this season, I would imagine that even our second team, which will probably field quite a number of those guys in this match, I know we'll get to that point here in a minute in terms of lineups, but I would imagine even that, because some of those guys have progressed as well this season and in terms of their level of play. So Tywell being at the top of that, I think he has an opportunity to start this match. So I still think that's better than what Luton's fielding, clearly being 20th in the championship, and we are where we are. So I'm not afraid of this whatsoever. And if we don't smash them, 3-0, 4-0, I'd be shocked, because I just think that they're an exponential slide at the moment. So I see what you're saying. It's just that nagging feeling maybe in the back of your mind that there might be a banana skin, but I just don't see it. I think we're just too good, too composed, too well structured.
I thought the same last year. I was at the Blackpool third round game last year. I won't be there this Saturday, Mark, unfortunately. So I'm not going to be around for this one. He's asking that in the comments if I'm going to be there. Unfortunately not. But it is the kind of game, Dan, that, as Richard says, really, I mean, going on form and going on how their season's going and how our season's going. And you talked about the points that have been grabbed by both teams since we last played them. I mean, this has got to be a win for Forest, hasn't it?
Well, Richard's gone big there with his 3 or 4-0 prediction straight out the gate. So I think I'm sort of torn because, like you said, we want to keep that momentum going in the league. And this is one of those games against a team that you probably wouldn't want to face a couple of days before a big title deciding game against Liverpool. So, yeah, I'm a little bit torn on sort of how we approach it and how it pans out in terms of they're quite a... I looked through some of their stats. They've got the most yellow cards in the championships, the most red cards in the championship. They chuck loads of crosses in. They win loads of aerial duels. So it's one of those games that's going to be a battle. It'll be very interesting to see how some of our fringe players do, the likes of Ramon Sosa and Jota Silva and stuff, in that proper classic championship style of game. So it'd be good to see them do that and get a proper taste of it. But also one of those games where I just worry that, they're not going to go easy on us. They're going to potentially, make it difficult for us, and hopefully we don't pick up any injuries or anything that then affects us going on into that Liverpool game.
Raf looking like a Bond villain in that chair at the moment. I'm just waiting for a nice white cat to hop up onto your lap, sir. Raf, I mean, we'll talk about line-up and team selection, I think, now, because this is a chance for Nuno to effectively make 11 changes if he wants to. We've talked about squad depth all season. And ahead of the important game on Tuesday night against Liverpool, we're not going to want to risk any of our star players, are we? So do you think there's going to be wholesale changes? What are your thoughts going into this one on lineup and shape?
10 changes. We can't make 11. If we could make 11, we make 11. It's just in midfield, we don't have the bodies that are all fit to be able to make all 11 changes. But I expect we will have right from goalkeeper all the way forward. It actually fits quite naturally. We actually have, it's a well-constructed squad. There's basically 2 for every position. And so we are literally just swapping in and out. We kind of did it against Newcastle earlier in the season, where our second 11 pretty much should have beaten Newcastle. We're pretty close to doing it as well. And I do think it'll literally just be a switch out, which is very exciting. I've wanted to see Miguel in goal for a long while. Now not. I mean, I'm really happy Sells is goalkeeping, but I'm really excited to see Miguel again for a game. Moriera, potentially even Abbott, but getting in Omobamidele and others as well into there, naturally fitting for a Sosa, a Jota, and a Taiwo to be right there and present. But I do think we will go back 3/5 at the back. For everything Dan said about, balls being flown in the box, lots of crosses, I do think we need 3 at the back. But it's where we're stocked up with our reserves. We have a lot more central defenders in there and not as many midfielders, and also that replacement for Morgan Gibbs-White. Every way you look at it, the players that are coming in, Moriera and on the other wing, they're naturally wing backs as well, rather than full backs. So that's kind of that's my vibe, and I'm really excited to see who wants it. This is a real opportunity for those that are not starting to have an absolute blinder and turn Nuno's head and just go, do you know what? Maybe give them a shot in the starting lineup.
Well, I think there might be 11 changes, and I'm going to bring up a team in a moment. But there's one player that we might be seeing back in the starting lineup on Saturday. Now we don't want to get carried away. There have been some nice images, Richard, of Danilo in training. He travelled with the team to Wolves, I think, to get him back in the swing of things of being with the team. So look, here's the team that I've got on the FOTMob. And so I'm going to read out what I think it could be, which is Carlos Miguel in goal, Moreno at left back, could be Toffolo, but I put Moreno, De Silva Moreira at right back. I've gone with a back 4. I've put Morato and Bolly in, although, that could be Zach Abbott. I don't think Omobamidele will play because I think he's going to go on loan to Leeds. I don't know that will be a factor or not, potentially. It might be. But I think if it's not Morato, it will be Abbott. In the midfield, you can still make the changes from the Wolves game with Yates and Ward-Prowse playing there. Sosa left, Silva right, and then Danilo a bit more protected in that further up position in the 10 with Taiwo Awoniyi playing as focal point just there. Look, so, I mean, Richard, what do you think? Raf is thinking of a back 3 or /5. Where are you at in terms of shape and personnel?
Yeah, when I was envisioning what they were going to use, Nuno was going to put on the pitch in terms of personnel, this is kind of more akin. I probably wasn't 100% sure whether Danilo would be fit enough to play. But I think, as it's been pointed out in our chat, and I'm sure in other conversations out there in the media, it makes sense. This seems to be the right time, if he is healthy enough to play, to get him some match fitness and to give him a chance to get acclimated again. And it's just going to be such a brilliant thing to see him walk out on the pitch if he does, because he's a great player, and we've not missed him per se in terms of the necessity to have someone like him on the team, but he's definitely adds and he enhances what we do. Yeah, I like the balance of this because there's enough experience there to stress them and to get that 3 or 4-0 win that I mentioned. Gives Taiwo plenty of opportunity now to get accumulate some significant minutes, which he just hasn't done, as we know. Gives, as Raf pointed out, Sosa and Silva another opportunity to shine, because they did do that against Newcastle. I mean, the intensity level for that squad during that match, I mean, I think you can see something happening again, because the way our mentality is, we're not even as much as we might be concerned about Luton being up for it, because they know where Rob Edwards' situation is. They understand and want to win matches. They want to get momentum themselves. I just think the mental fortitude we have, the way that we approach every single match with the same level of commitment appears to be it's just a constant this season. So I just don't see it being any different. But I like the balance of experience and youth on this team. It's great to see Bali get a start, because I just don't think he's going to be with us after this season, which is so devastating. And I'm sure especially devastating to the chairman of his fan club on our podcast right now, Danscape. But and get Ward Prowse a chance too, because he had a nice little appearance the other day. So it's great to see him kind of being woven back into the mix. So yeah, I like this lineup. I think this is a good way to set it up. And it's Nuno's classic formation too. It's the one he tends to default to, even though we know he's got that in his toolkit to throw out that back three.
You're on mute.
I am on mute because I'm coughing.
Wow, your voice really has gone now.
I want to say hi to Stephen Bullivant, who normally listens on Spotify. He said he's glad to be here catching it live for once, and we're glad about that as well, Stephen. Thank you very much. Mark Woolwell, he thinks that it could be wholesale changes with a second string 11. He's pretty much put on the same kind of team as what I'm showing there on the FOT Mob. Hi to Bruce. Good morning to you. Darren reckons maybe Danilo to have half an hour off the bench. That possibly is more sensible, potentially.
Correct.
Patch Adams is commenting, saying that Nuno has always taken the FA Cup very seriously. Near full strength team out last season against Blackpool and Bristol. He thinks 5-6 changes at the most. Yes, I agree. And whilst last year we were having a different kind of battle on our hands at the bottom end of the table, this year we are in a great position. So the argument might be, well, look, we don't want to lose any of our important players from Liverpool. I suppose the flip side is that says, well, look, we know we're safe. We've already far exceeded what we thought we might do. And actually, an FA Cup run is now really, really important to us. So maybe, Pat, you're right. Maybe it is only just going to be a few changes that we see from Nuno against Luton Town. Paul's with us. He's asking about the JWP situation. No, we thought and we understand that there isn't a recall on JWP in the contract. So it could be that maybe there's an agreement that comes to pass between the clubs. There has to be an agreement now Potter's taken over, but there is not a clause from what we understand in the contract when he signed on loan. And Gary Lamb is with us as well. Good afternoon to you, Gary. Dan, thinking about the shaping personnel, I mean, where are you at? Raf still put forward that argument for a back three. We've got superstar Willy Bolly playing. I think that's got to happen. What are you thinking?
I think the two that are a definite swap is the fullbacks, Moreira and Moreno. Just energy levels and everything like that. They need a break. Sorry,
not Toffolo.
Well, it could be, either. I suppose I'm just thinking if it is Moreno, I think a back three suits better with Moreira and Moreno in terms of their skills are a little bit more going forward than defensively. So I think a back three helps those two as an overall balance to the team. And I don't think we'll see Danilo from the start. So then if you don't have Danilo in that formation, then who do you put in there? Who do you risk? Is it Anderson? Is it Gibbs-White? Do you play Wooden a 1 year up top and not have a 10? So I think the back three lends itself to the players we've got available, which is what Raf was saying there. And I think it helps Moreira in particular, perhaps in this kind of game. And then in terms of who's in that back three, you have got the choice of Abbott, Bamadelli. Could be either of those two. You might see Abbott in this kind of game with the extra bit of protection back there, but don't know how good he is in the air to deal with all their crosses and some of their giant forwards. So that'll be a big test for him, which again is part of the reason for looking forward to these games, is for those players that aren't playing regularly to get these kind of tests, because you can't avoid it in your career, can you? So he's got to face that kind of thing eventually. That to me looks like a balanced lineup if you're prioritizing the squad and the minutes on the pitch. And I don't know with that, obviously with what Patch Adams is saying in the comments, I don't know whether we had a game after those cup games so close, like, literally just 2 days turnaround recovery time this time, which I think it's just the wrong way around. Ideally, you'd have the Liverpool game on the Saturday and the cup game in the week, and then you could judge it a bit better. So I think, on balance, it's probably more likely this kind of game, and then you're just giving a few minutes to like Anderson to come on, maybe Danilo, if he is in the squad, Luton, not the ideal opponent to put an injured player back straight in against, I don't think, in terms of potentially getting kicked about a bit. So maybe just give him 10 minutes if he's able.
Would you split Would you shift Omabadeli to the right?
I would, but they didn't do that against Newcastle, did they?
Oh, really? Okay.
I think
It's a really interesting point Dan made, actually, about the recovery time and what Patch was saying, because this is the twilight zone that we're living in. Why do we value the cup, right? Other than getting a bit of form to help us out, is because it's a route into Europe. And on any particular day, any team beating any team, it's not the attritional war that the league is, and anything can happen in the cup. But for the first time ever, we've got a better chance by paying attention to the league than we do paying attention to the cup to actually getting into Europe. We just focused.
So I've actually, I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have written down the question before you've even started this, which is a cup run important? And from what you're saying that the only reason why we should value the cup now is to get into Europe. So are you completely dismissing the idea of actually winning a trophy as anything of any kind of value? Because to me, the question is, Raf, and I'm going to ask you this first, would you rather finish in the bottom half of the Premier League and win the FA Cup or finish top four?
No, not top four, because that's Champions League. That's different. The FA Cup doesn't give you Champions League.
No, but I'm asking the question, would you rather finish in the bottom half of the Premier League?
I take Champions League.
You'd rather finish top four than win the FA Cup?
Yeah, I'd take the Champions League.
What about you, Danscape?
No, I'd take the cup. I think the cup's a one-off. You know, the cup's going to happen once every 50 years. Top four, we could build on where we are, and we could get there within, 2, 3, 4 years, I think. I
mean, Brian Clough said it time and time again. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as you've got something to show for it at the end of the season. Now, I know that top four is the new kind of version of winning a trophy, but I'm old school. I want silverware. We haven't won the FA Cup since 1959. And Richard, what do you think?
It's 80 mil extra. It's 80 mil.
I don't see that money.
You can do with
that.
I don't care about the money. I couldn't give it.
It's what it can do for the club.
I want the trophy. Don't you want to see Ryan Yates at Wembley lifting the FA Cup above your head?
A day at Wembley is better than anything.
I want us to be perennially top 8. I want us to be perennially top 8, and every single year challenging and potentially being in Europe. And that is giving us the best chance to get the cash injections. That getting to Champions League is game changing from a PSR perspective. It's game changing from so many.
It's not about PSR though. That's
is it? Right. Listen, I've got to ask Richard because Richard sat there. Richard, come on. Are you FA Cup win or are you top 4 finish?
I mean, I was supposed to go to the 1991 World Cup or FA Cup final, and I couldn't because I was sick, and it was devastating to even watch it. So a part of me says I want the FA Cup as sort of a retribution for that horrible moment in my childhood. But I honestly, I'm kind of aligned with Raf. I would love to get the FA Cup, but honestly, it's about progression towards the seasons in front of us. We've got to be able to develop a financial position that allows us to be able to secure guys like we have right now, if possible. I mean, we know if Murillo gets a good opportunity, he's going to go. If it's going to give us an increased position in terms of our financial stability, he's going to go. But at the same time, it's like, my goodness, I mean, we get the value of Europe and we get the revenue, and we can't dismiss that. I know you want to compartmentalize it and keep one over here and one over here. For notoriety's sake, for the history of the club's sake, yeah, it'd be great to see Yates holding up that trophy. Any one of our players that we love and covet right now holding up that trophy, Nuno holding up that trophy. But I think from a sustainability standpoint, I want to get in the top 4. I want to chase the title. And I'm not saying that there's not value to it for Nuno's perspective, but I guess we're going to be splitting on this one because I tend to lean towards the revenue and I tend to lean towards getting to Europe through the top 4 finish.
And Greg, being at Wembley and lifting that, or being in your seat in the City ground and hearing the Champions League music playing.
Nah, it's
Yeah,
not
I
even
thought about that.
close.
Listen, I've thought about that. One second,
even
I'm going to
close.
go to the comments because we've got lots of comments in there.
Yeah.
Wolfie is saying Champions League is priority, and he thinks the revenue is huge, and he wants to blow more smoke up your backside because he thinks you're always right, and he's saying it again. I'm not quite sure about that, to be honest with you. Paul Morley says, "Be greedy, go for both." Yeah, listen, of course we want to go for both, but that's not. To be honest with you, that's not the question. The question is, if you've got to choose, gun to your head, are you going Champions League or are you going to go to Wembley and win the FA Cup? I'm not talking FA Cup final. I'm talking winning it. NFFC Jules, he's saying top 4 all day long. And I get that. Look, I run a business, right? And I'm always trying to look at things from a business point of view and taking away the emotion, because sometimes you have to have that cutthroat kind of angle that says, for the good of the business, to make sure that we sustain ourselves and we progress and we grow. And it's not just a here and now factor. It's the next 5-10 years factor that Raf, you're talking about. I buy into all of that. I buy into that completely. But I tell you what, I'm of the generation when the FA Cup, and I know you guys are in the same kind of bracket as that. When the FA Cup was, I mean, I remember 1991. I cried. I was 16 when we lost, and to go to the FA Cup final at Wembley and win, to me, I just feel that would be an incredible achievement. I know that Champions League football is incredible as well, but I guess, I just feel I probably would still take the FA Cup, rightly or wrongly. Maybe the emotion and the romanticism that I have for Forest and everything else makes me feel like I want the FA Cup. Paul Morley mentioned that in the third round, and here's the tweet he put out, in the last 8 seasons, the team sitting third in the table on the third round weekend has gone on to win the FA Cup 5 times. Now, he's asking, could we? So let me kind of like diffuse things a little bit here. I think, going back to what Paul was saying, remove the question that I was asking, the black and white question. I actually think that both is possible. I think genuinely that we are going to finish in the top 4. And I just have a feeling that we could go all the way in the FA Cup. So I think both is completely possible. Am I mad, Dan, to suggest that we can win the FA Cup and get in the Champions League?
No, because if we could get through this round and then we're sort of we know where we are a bit more with the league almost within another couple of weeks, and so as long as we can stay in the cup past this game, we'll almost feel comfortable in the league of like, right, we're going to be roughly where we want to be anyway. I think obviously bottom half versus FA Cup isn't really realistic now. It's a case of maybe we finish 9th instead of 6th and the FA Cup. So we're still going to be a massive progression. So when you're talking about financial stability and all that, we're already ahead of where we thought we were going to be this season. We're going to get that anyway. So we can do both. And the type of team we are in terms of winning the FA Cup, difficult to beat, don't concede many goals, usually score a goal a game. You only have to win 1-0 to get through each round and get your way to the final of the cup. So we're a team that's set up for a good cup run. It's just about like managing this little period, I think, and seeing where we end up. And I think I'm still fully. I just don't think there's even close. The idea that going to the City Ground and hearing the Champions League music would be as memorable as a day at Wembley. Seeing the FA Cup win and all that. I just don't think it's even close. I think that's like a one-off. It's the club. It's Marinakis and his mates' job to worry about finances. It's our job to just enjoy watching.
Yeah, I think as the fans,
head versus heart.
As the fans, it's a fan's job to want those silverware moments. Right, time is really pushing us along. To finish off our match talk, Raf, I know you put together a little bit of a brief look at Luton. So let's hear what you've got in terms of how they set up. Rob Edwards is still their manager. There is talk that he is going to be parting ways by mutual consent. TalkSport have been reporting that since yesterday. Nothing official just yet. What have you got on Luton and their shape, Raf?
Cool. So weirdly, they've been super consistent playing 3 at the back and basically playing this kind of 3 or back 5, 3 in midfield and 2 up front. It was the last game where I think he's just going, right, let's try something different. And he's tried what the formation that Nuno normally plays. But what we do have is actually quite a lot of consistency between the players that they're playing. He's not chopping and changing. There's consistency in who plays at the back, who's playing up top, in midfield, all round. So I think we'll be able to figure out who they've got, the threats that are there. The formation is a bit difficult to say if he sticks on his 4-2-3-1 or if he goes for his tried and tested three at the back and playing his wing backs. To that end, though, if he does go for his tried and tested method, he is got his wing backs +3 in midfield. And the games that we have struggled against is where we get out-battled and outnumbered in midfield. And then Nuno does what Nuno does, changes it up, and then hopefully it usually all turns okay. So that's the one bit that I'd caution with the way that Luton set up, is actually being slightly overrun in midfield, especially if we don't have Anderson in there, et cetera, and our strongest players. Saying that, though, you know what? Our second 11, I still think, is better than their team. And so I just like them to do the talking. But that's my one area of concern with the Luton setup.
So we go into the game. We expect there to be a raft of changes. And I'm thinking a quick score prediction that we're going to win 3-0. I'm going to go off first with 3-0. Richard, over to you for your score prediction.
I said the same thing. If we don't smash them 3-0, 4-0, then I'd be surprised. So I'm gonna go 4-0, just to ratchet it up a little bit.
I like that. I like it being matched up. Danscape.
They've got the second worst defense in the Championship. They concede almost 2 goals a game. Their opponents have scored 10 more goals than expected than the XG, and the goalkeepers allowed 4 more than expected, and they've missed 5 goals versus what was expected. So they are not in a good place, and I think 3-1 Forest.
And Raf, score prediction, please.
Dan's taken the score. I think it is our, the people that haven't been playing a lot. So I do think, as good at defence we've been, I do think there's a chance they will score, and it is Luton. They're just annoying. So they probably will score a goal, but I do think the fact that the teams will click, you might even get some subs of the first team coming on for the last 25 minutes, and I think we'll probably ratchet it up to 3 for us. 3-1.
Okay, thank you very much. Guys, I've got some bad news, unfortunately. For those listening and watching, there isn't actually going to be any Statman today. We're not doing Statman. Yeah, I know. We have got this instead. Joining us live on Talking Reds, your quizmaster or Stats the Mind. It's Danscape. Got a quiz, mate. Got a quiz. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, hello. Welcome to Stats to Mind. So this is a Thomas Frank approved quiz all about Forest players this season. So basically, I'm gonna ask you each a question individually, and you've got to name the Forest player that's recorded the highest or the lowest of this particular stat in a single game this season so far.
In a single game.
In a single game. So you get there's 3 points available on each question, because you can tell me the player that got this, the highest or lowest. You can tell me the match that it was in, and you can guess at what the actual value of that statistic is, which is obviously the hardest bit, to get your 3rd point. Okay? Ooh. So I will go round in order. All the answers are outfield players. There's no trick questions like, Matt Sells or whatever. And it's all just the Forest players, not the opposition. And yeah, basically 3 rounds, 3 questions each. And it gets a little bit harder as we go through. So
are we each getting different questions? So we're not all answering the same question.
So it's kind of quick fire.
Okay.
Answer within 20 seconds, that kind of thing. And we'll start with we'll go with you, Greg, for the first round, which is who committed the most fouls in a game for Forest so far this season? So you want the player, the game, and the number of fouls.
You want the player, the game, and the number of fouls? That's
how you get 3, yeah. But you don't, you can just get 1 point. That might be good going into some of the harder questions.
Jesus. I'm going to go with Jota Silva, I'm going to. Well, listen, that guy gives away a lot of fouls when he comes on, right?
I know.
What's a silver against. Who did we play recently? He's coming against Aston Villa, and the score was 2-1. Did you want the score as well? Did you say?
No, the number of
how many
fouls.
fouls?
Number of fouls, 4.
Yeah. I'm afraid 0 points for that one, unfortunately. It was, of course, Ryan Yates.
Yates.
Man United away, committing 6 fouls in classic Ryan
gosh.
Yates style. And Ryan Yates is also number 2 in that list as well. As you'd expect.
I was going to say Yates, but I just thought it was too obvious. There you go.
No, some of them are obvious, not all of them. But I'm not trying to trick you too much on this one. It's just to see if you've been paying attention to the Statman section.
Okay.
Richard, question for you is: who's had the most offsides in a game this season, and which game, and how many offsides?
I think it's not going to be obvious because I think he's been the culprit in the past, which was Anthony Alanga. But I'm going to say Chris Wood, and I'm going to say it was. I'm trying to think of a game where we had a lot of offsides. No. Actually, I'm going to change my answer. Callum Hudson-Odoi. Brighton, I don't know. And it was 3.
So close.
0 points.
It was Chris Wood.
Ah!
And it was against Fulham at home, and he was offside 4 times in that one game. So that's
Could have gotten a point.
0 point. Unfortunately. This is the easy round, guys. Come on.
Oh my word.
This is easy. Okay.
Raf.
Right, bring it on, Dan.
Here's one for Raf. Right. Who's took the most corner kicks in a game this season, and which game? And how many corners did they take? If you can get all 3.
I would say let's go with.
Think who takes corners? There's not many.
No, I know. It's basically it's either Alanga or Anderson. And Anderson would take them from both sides, unless it was Ward-Prowse in early days. But I'm going to go, and I'm going to go Anderson.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Anderson, and I'm going to go. Southampton, and I'm saying he took 5.
So, Raf, you get 1 point out of the 3.
Oh, I got a point.
It was actually Anthony Alanga
Wasn't it?
versus Southampton, though, and he took 9 corners.
Oh yeah,
9. So yeah, Elanga on that one. So after round 1, only 1 point scored. What I would say is sometimes with
high octane.
Goodness.
Sometimes I would say with the team guess, it's like you don't need to think of the player and the team. Just like sometimes the opposition's more obvious than the player, and so yeah, just keep that in mind for the next round. Round two. So we'll go back to you, Greg. There's 2 players that qualify for this on joint at the top, so you've got a choice of 2. The highest XG in a single game for Forest this season, and what team was it against, and what was the XG? So there's 2 players that have got the same. I would say this is slightly less obvious one.
This is
Think
tough.
who's had a really good chance, a real literally sitter of a chance in a game. And what game was it?
Dominguez against Villa. No, not Villa, Leicester, sorry.
Can I before you give it away, can I have a
Go on,
random outside the box guess?
Yeah.
Taiwo last game.
Yes, Taiwo last game is one of them. Milenkovic v Southampton, if you remember that ball across that it kind of hit him and it didn't go in from point blank range, was the other one. So unfortunately, that's 0 point.
Taiwo had like a.
I was just thinking of that super save that the Leicester keeper made.
Yeah.
Which I thought,
No, that's a good shout. It's a good shout, but not up there on that one. So Richard, round 2 question: who's made the most tackles in a game this season against who, and how many tackles do you think they made? And again, it's possibly not a super. I mean, it may not be the first thing you think of.
Look at
Yeah, 'cause I
Dan's
was gonna say
face. Is he smiling loads? If it is, it's Bolly. If it's not, if he's not,
No.
then it's not.
It's not, it's not.
I want to say it's Anderson because I think he tends to. He's had games where he's gotten a lot of tackles, so I'm going to say Anderson. Oh gosh.
Ultimately, who would we have had to defend a lot against? I guess.
Yeah. Oh man, is it Newcastle? And
not,
he
I'm
made
afraid.
7 tackles.
Oh, yeah, forgot about that bit. Close on that one. It was actually Morgan Gibbs-White
Oh, how could I not go to
Against-
that?
against Brentford, where he made 8 tackles in that game when he played in his deeper role, which is more than Sangare when he was playing the holding role and all that.
Yeah. Makes sense.
This is
I'm
all
afraid.
part of the rehabilitation of Raf and his love for Morgan Gibbs-White being top of that.
There you go. He's an all-rounder.
Time's against us, guys. We're going to have to speed things up.
Yeah. So, quicker answers. Who's made the most passes? Who's completed the most passes in a game this season? And against who?
I'd say it's either Murillo or Milenkovic, and I'd go. It's probably in a single game.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Murillo, even though it's probably Milenkovic because Murillo's pinging it more. But I'm going to go Murillo, and he probably passed it. Let's go with. I'm going to go Southampton again, just because it's Southampton, and I'd say he probably passed it, made 14 passes.
I'm afraid it's 0 points. Elliot Anderson against Aston Villa when the entire game was played in the middle of the park there, and he made 57 passes. Murillo was second, unfortunately, against Palace.
Oh,
So, 0 points. So Raf with the only point so far still. Going into the last round. The last round, we're going to flip it. So this time you're guessing who's had the fewest of this thing, right? So this is the least of this thing in a game, and they're all starters. So ignore subs because obviously that skews it. So this is players who started a game and then had the least of something. So Greg, who's had the fewest touches in a game? And there's 2 players that are level on this, and against which team would it have been?
We're talking about starters.
Yeah.
You say.
So it's got to have started the game and then had the least of. So you think of position where they
Yeah,
play.
yeah.
Think of the type of team where we wouldn't
Slam
necessarily have
dunk.
many touches.
Wood against Liverpool. And
Any idea how many touches?
8.
So 1 point. 1 point for Greg. He's back at level. It was Chris Wood or Jota Silva.
yeah.
It was Chris Wood against Wolves, literally the other day. Had the fewest touches, and Jota against Man City they both had 21 touches throughout the entire game before being taken off. So next one up for Richard. Greg's back in level. It's going to be tight.
Yeah, I'm becoming the Matt Turner of this.
Richard, who's completed the fewest passes in a game against who, and how many passes? So fewest passes from starting game.
So it's fewest completed or most Rye passes.
No, fewest completed passes. They've been on the pitch and they've only literally made a number of passes.
All right.
Again, think position on the pitch.
I know.
obviously Not getting involved necessarily. Difficult team to play against.
I'm gonna go Chris Wood again, and I'm gonna say against Arsenal. And I'm
How many
saying
passes?
2, 3,
Whoa.
3,
Hang on, which answer?
Oh,
2.
3.
Oh, Rich, you've done yourself out of a point on that last bit. It was Chris Wood indeed. And it was against Man City away where he made only 2 passes. 2 passes completed.
But I got 1 point,
Could
right?
have took the lead. But you're back. Yeah, it's all on Raf or a tiebreaker. So Raf, your question is who's carried the ball the fewest yards in the game, and who against, and how many yards roughly did they carry it? And now carrying it can be in any direction. It's literally when they've got the ball at their feet, moving in any direction. Who's basically dribbled the ball, the least during a game?
Oh, it's Chris Wood again. Yeah.
Against who?
Heads it on, or he sticks it in the back of the net. All the defenders are moving with it, all the midfielders moving it, and so again, probably least amount. It'll probably be against Man City if that was the same game. So Chris Wood, Man City, and how many do I have to do yards?
20 yards? Yeah, just
blood. Right.
See how low you think.
25 yards. Chris Wood, Man City.
We have a winner. He's got 1 point in the final round just to sneak it and win it. 2 points to 1 for everybody else. So it was indeed either Chris Wood or Milenkovic. Both got the same on this. But it was for Chris Wood, it was against Brighton. And for Milenkovic, it was against Man United away. And they both dribbled, they both carried the ball only 5 yards in that game. So they literally just got it and passed. Well done, Raf. You win it 2-1. That is the end.
Well, that was fun and very hard, I have to say. I'm quite good at my general knowledge, but when it comes to recording the stats of all of our players, maybe not so good. So we're going to take a very, very quick break. We'll transition with this back very soon.
He hits the derby. Where's Garibaldi? Oh, Nicola, 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 la, la. You won't get past that. Big sad bastard. Nicola Milenkovic.
Lots of people joining in the comments with that. So thanks very much for getting involved. We try and do a few different things as usual here on Talking Reds. I wanted, with the time we've got left, to just have a think about our stats series. Now, all 5 episodes are out. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can go back and check out episodes 1 through to 5, where we, and Paul Morley, all took on a different topic, Forest related. But in episode 4, my co-founder and best bud, Richard Spray, talked about Morgan Gibbs-White. At the time of recording, it was just after the Villa game and just before Christmas. And so you were talking, Richard, about Morgan, and you were talking about how he compares to other number 10s. Since that game, since we did that episode, we've had 4 games, I think. And on the screen, I put the tweet that Forrest put out, 6 goal contributions in his last 6 games. He seems to be on fire. I want to try and keep this kind of succinct. I don't want to kind of get into too much of a deep dive into this. But Richard, are we now finally seeing again, now he's shaken off that injury that I feel held him back and he's getting back into his groove? Are we now starting to see Morgan Gibbs-White staking a claim for that first squad for Thomas Tuchel?
I think so. And Tuchel was in the City ground, wasn't he? So he definitely is. I think there's an absolute progression. If you go and watch the episode, we'll talk about that in relation to some other players that we know, some of which are kind of otherworldly in terms of like Phil Foden and those, and Odegaard and things of that nature. They're from a tier standpoint way up there. But his goal creating actions is now second behind Elliot Anderson. We've got to take into account too, Elliot Anderson gets more opportunities in the sense that he has the ability to take some free kicks, take dead ball opportunities, set piece opportunities, whereas Morgan didn't. And Elliot has 2 assists alone with that, one to Milenkovic header against Manchester United, and the other one was against Newcastle with Murillo scoring. So he's right there. He's moving his way up that ranking, but he's got 4 goals this season. He's maxed out. I think he had 6 last season. I think it was 5 the season before that. So he's improving year over year, and he's going to exceed that 6. I really believe that that's going to happen. There's plenty of games left for him to do that. His assist total is right on par with where he's been before. It's like a 0.23 assists per 90 on FB Ref. And so that's about the same as it was last season, the season before. And that's what we want to see. We want to see 10 assists plus, 10 goals plus. That's the territory he needs to get into to be considered, I think, one of the best 10s in the league. So he's definitely making his way there. And I think just the impact he has as an individual, his energy, his work rate, and his commitment to probably getting the best out of the teammates around him as well. I mean, he's definitely a respected player on the team, and he's got a great relationship with Nuno. That is certainly, I think, done a 180 compared to where he was at Wolves, but he's just matured as a person. So there's a lot going for him, and he's only 24 years old, by the way. So there's plenty of football left in his career. So yeah, I mean, his consistency of performance has been absolutely phenomenal compared to previous 2 seasons.
I'm not, if I'm honest with you, completely sold that there was a bad relationship between Nuno and Morgan when he was at Wolves. He was a very young player. He wasn't getting in the team because he was a young player and he needed to get loan action.
I think it's more trust, trust that he has now in him.
I just think it was a different dynamic, and I think Nuno always liked him, but just knew that he needed to grow. Raf, I'm going to give you 30 seconds on Morgan because I know you've been quite vocal against him. I say against him, that's not right. You haven't been against him at all. You're completely for him. You've been vocal in terms of, a critical friend. You've been a critical friend for him. So you've got 30 seconds on how you see his development over the last 4 or 5 games.
What I'd say is he's probably tuned into Rich's episode and just went, I'm going to buck my attitude up and sorted it out. A little bit like Sells, actually, to be fair, listening to mine. No, I would just go. This was the one bit that was missing from his game. I absolutely loved his energy, his tenacity. It was great. The tackling stat, everything else as well. It's that, I can't point the right way, that bit that you've got on screen. It was the actual registering assists and goals. If he gets those numbers up, that was the only thing really missing from his game. It's the full output. He's now got that. Things are really looking up. I think it's half because he's dropping a bit deeper in games. He's more difficult to pick up because he's all around the place. But yeah, really good news.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's true. Raf, you do hate more than Gibbs-White. It's no surprise that he's not bloody Rafa Nadal, for goodness sake, Wolfie. He's the Random Pundit. No surprise this one. Yeah, he likes pointless information. He stores it in that head. Maybe those dentist drugs are doing you well today. I wanted to also talk about with you guys another fabulous Forest player who we love. I know, Raf, you love this guy, but I've been sharing on our WhatsApp group a load of videos. I follow him on TikTok. And he is so infectious that I feel Ola Aina is bringing the soul back into the club. Take a look at this.
Murillo, come. Oh, this guy. Hey, I like it, bro. Carloso. Whoa. Hey.
He's just a piss taker, but in the best possible way. His banter he's always chasing Callum Hudson-Odoi around, like taking the mick. You've in that video, for those that were listening, you had Murillo and Carlos Miguel coming in, decked out, looking really kind of like dressed.
Where does Carlos Miguel buy his clothes? Looking
properly buff. I mean, Dan, look, a big part of why we, as a club and a team, I feel, have just gone up to another level is that element of unity. All right. Richard shared a quote with me yesterday, and this is the quote. And it's, when something has soul, it means it possesses a deep, authentic quality that goes beyond just its physical form, often signifying a sense of passion, creativity, emotion, or a strong, vital essence that makes it feel alive and meaningful, almost like a part of a person's spirit is imbued within it. It's not just an object, but something with a deeper character or identity. And how much credence do you place on something like that in sports? Because we've talked about players surpassing their maybe natural levels. We've talked about Matt Sells and how he's performing. We've talked about Wood and how he's now performed in the last year under Nuno, and maybe surpassing a level that they never thought, or we never thought they would reach. And so Ola Aina, I feel, with his off-field contributions as well as his amazing on-field stuff, he's more than just a cheerleader. He is the cheerleader. He is the MVP in a lot of games. But is there something in that where you get the right mix, the right chemistry, the right coming together of a whole load of different personalities, and you have someone like Aina off the pitch who's just threading it all together with his mischievousness, and actually it carries a team into places you never thought possible? Is there something in that, or am I just being crazy?
I think there's everything in that, isn't there? It's exactly what's happened with us is that you've got, it's a fine line to tread, because it's about being relaxed, but also being good at what you do. You can't have one without the other. You can't be sort of intense and just train and be good without then, when you get out onto the pitch and as a team, have the confidence and being relaxed enough to find that balance to put it into action. So you can have the greatest player in the world, but if they don't feel comfortable in a team, if they don't know what their teammate is going to do, and that's on the pitch, off the pitch, if they don't feel comfortable, you won't get the best out of them. I'm sure we all know it from like personal, they're no different to us doing our job. You have good employers, you have bad employers, you have a good boss, a bad boss, you have good people you work with. And when it's good, you enjoy it more and you actually do, you produce more, you do a better job. And that's what's happening. And it's the same in sport, but it doesn't come without them being brilliant individually. But it's that extra little bit of belief that's coming from the top and belief in each other and that sense of like a common, I think they've just got a common goal, which is we're underdogs and we can just going to see how far we can finish. And that's huge.
I've talked about Richard Forest on many platforms being the club of miracles, because I feel that when it comes to magic things happening, going right back to when Clough came in and took us up and the European days, special things happen at Forest. And I know that we had the dark days of 23 years out of the top flight where it might have felt like there wasn't any magic or miracles happening at all. I always felt like actually that was a bit of a payoff. Someone down the line back in the 70s said to the devil, look, here's my soul, right? You give me years of magic under Clough, and then I'll tell you what, we'll go back down for 23 years. Like a trade-off happens. Someone made that deal with the devil somewhere, but we're back. And so, you and I have talked about Forest being the club of miracles, the club where things happen. I know that other clubs have had special moments as well, but it's the people, isn't it? And I know that you're big on this. It's the people. It's more than just playing football. You've got to have that chemistry, haven't you, for it to work, for you to get anywhere?
Definitely. And it makes me think a couple of things. Firstly, one of the things that we talked about pretty openly at the beginning of the season before, when we first started the podcast, was what we were witnessing amongst just the interactions and the early stages of the preseason. And you could see that there was something different about the way that they were going about things. You could see a different sort of level of joy and happiness and togetherness that was beginning to build. And we were wondering, like, okay, is this just going to be a bunch of guys who just get along really well? And so, that's what you're seeing. And of course, whenever you show videos of inside the dressing room or other places, it's always going to be jovial. It's always going to highlight the good things, but it's clearly happened. And I think of the movie Jerry Maguire. If you've ever seen the movie Jerry Maguire, and so there was this point in the movie where Rod Tidwell's talking about Jerry, and he gets emotional about it, just the relationship that they have. And then there's another player on the sideline who's got Bob Sugar, who's that jerk in the movie, right, that nobody likes. And Bob Sugar kind of feigns trying to like hug him as a way of showing like, I care about you, when he really obviously doesn't. And in my mind, I know this sounds horrible leap on my part and probably very punitive and judgmental, but I feel like that's the difference between a top four side like Forest and the other ones around us. It just feels like, especially like a Man City, it just feels like a well-oiled machine versus being driven by something a little bit more intangible or a little bit more ethereal, I guess, for lack of a better word. And there's something about the way that Nuno has sort of infused this sacrifice and this willingness to go to battle for each other. And like I keep using the word connectedness because I can't think of another word, but you used unity. I mean, you could use cohesion. I mean, all of these different ways of describing it, but absolutely. And I think that's such a great mix, and they've brought in players that are buying into all of that, and I think just innately have those kinds of traits, as well as being great footballers. It's such a beautiful balance to see unfolding, and I think that there was a lot of that when we were younger and watching Clough's teams, because you had a guy who was a very different managerial style who expected a lot of his players. He wanted excellence all the time, but he taught them how to be that way. Nuno expects these guys to play hard for each other, expects them to give every individual effort like Dan touched on, but he wants to see it done in a way that's about building that culture and that chemistry together. And it's unfolded, and it's incredible to watch. It's the same sort of feeling we had when we were younger, just in a completely different package.
We're out of time, guys. And so I'm going to kind of go into added time again, as usual. I didn't get a chance to do a full cheese trader ad, but I will say, of course, he is our sponsor. Stu Freestone is an absolute legend. The card is on the screen. 10% off when you order with the cheese trader. All the stuff, all the links, etc., are in the bio to this episode. Also want to say as well, please do like and subscribe. Bruce is right. Lots of people watching. If you're not already, subscribe to the channel, please. Yeah, despite the quiz results, we kind of know a little bit what we're talking about.
Yeah, at least Dan and Raf know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Just give me some trivia questions and I might do a little bit better. I wanted to also mention that our fantastic Forest women won last night, 1-0 in the FA Women's World Cup, FA Cup. And so they're through to round 4. They beat Burnley at the City Ground. It went to extra time. Emily Batty in goal, from what I can gather, had some great saves as well. And she was celebrating her 100th appearance finally back at home at the City Ground. So congratulations to the female Forest team, the Forest women doing and going unbeaten still at the moment. I'm going to creep into added time also by saying that we have been linked with a certain player. Now, Fabrizio Romano is saying that Forest are among the clubs showing interest in Douglas Luiz. He hasn't been a regular starter at Juventus. His situation apparently is open this January. In the last sort of 24, 48 hours, it came out from Sky that Nuno wasn't looking at making any particular wholesale signings. He was more intent on getting Murillo tied down and also Chris Wood. It turns out that Ola Aina, there's another year additional extension available to Forest, which I've never heard of because he was on a 1-year deal that got extended in the summer to go to a second. It now transpires, it seems, that all of our panic about Aina getting snapped up by another club can be put to the side for the moment because we are going to trigger another year on his contract. At the same time, we are in negotiations about an even longer contract. So getting our stars pinned down and settled with that camaraderie and team spirit is what we want to do. But Raf, just very briefly, if we are going to bring in players to add to this mix, and we've got to be careful we don't upset anyone, or in terms of any apple cart, I don't care about upsetting players that aren't playing well. If they want to play for the shirt and play in the team, then great. So I'm not worried about putting noses out of joint. I'm worried about upsetting that chemistry we've been talking about. Now, is Douglas Luiz the kind of player that you would be attracted to if there's a chance we can get him?
Yes. Basically, yeah, absolutely. Effectively, when he was at Villa fans, some of them, and Dan's done a bit of research in this, but they've basically, quite a large section of them said, since they came back up, he is the best player to ever played for them. And I don't think there's any coincidence that him having been there, they get Champions League football. I think he is that good. And it will create a completely crazy fluid midfield three of him, Anderson, and Morgan Gibbs-White. All three can tackle, all three can pass, and all three can move with the ball. And it will just create an elite midfield, as far as I'm concerned, for next year. Greg, very quickly though, something I really passionately want to say is that on that soul piece that you were talking about, I think we really, really need to acknowledge Cooper. Because if you remember back to when Worrell was all emotional at the end of a season and he was saying the fact all it takes is actually a hug and putting your arm around someone rather than whipping them. And that was the transition. He also had that policy about bringing players in of being the right personality to be there. And I think that was a large reason of why we got up. Miracle 1, Miracle 2 of staying up, of what he laid the foundations. Nuno has taken it to the next level, but a lot of the players that are here were brought in by Cooper and that policy as well. So I think we just need to acknowledge that is actually the foundations that he laid.
I agree completely, and I was thinking the same thing. You know, Cooper had that team spirit and that chemistry happening, which is why we got up. That was we had that in that promotion-winning season. Obviously, when you have a lot of loan players as part of that depart, and then we have to do overhaul changes, it's not rocket science to see that that's going to go. You're going to have a load of new faces, and you know, I think hopefully when people look back on the Steve Cooper time, you know. No, the Steve Cooper cult is not still alive. It's not about the Steve Cooper cult, Reds fan. Clueless Cooper, I'm sorry, I'm going to disagree with you. Shambolic at this level? No, not shambolic at this level. I'm sorry, you've got your opinion, but I don't agree with that. I'm going to say it. We came up at the Championship, and I didn't even intend to go here, but I'm going to answer this. We came up out of the Championship in the state that we did. We should not have got promoted. That was a ridiculous thing to have happened with that team and with that squad and with those players. It was a ridiculous thing to have happened. We were in no shape to survive in the Premier League. For anyone to survive with the players that we brought in that first season was an absolute miracle. Look at Ipswich, look at Sheffield United, look at Southampton when they've been up last season, Sheffield United. Look at them, Burnley coming up. You know, they tried to buy players. They bought about 15, 16 players. They still went straight back down again. You know, we rolled the dice. Steve Cooper may not be at the level to survive or be a good manager in the Premier League, but he was a manager that needs respect. And I'm sorry, a low block mug. Nah, sorry. He did his job and he kept us in the Premier League. He took us to the point where parting company with him was the right thing to do. So we've got to look back and we've got to respect where we come from and what we achieved under that man. It was a moment in time that puts us where we are now. Because I tell you what, we could quite easily be playing Rotherham in League One. We could quite easily be getting relegated again because we were going nowhere. We wouldn't have had the investment. We wouldn't have had Mr. Marinakis putting his hand in his pocket. So if you want to look back and say that we are Steve Cooper cultists, then I'm sorry, you're wrong. That's not the case at all. We just have respect for what he did for this football club, okay? And we have respect for what we are doing now. We are in the position we are in, and I'm on a soapbox because I feel passionately about this football club, and I feel passionately about the contributions that people have made to it. Now, you might want to look back and rewrite history and talk about Steve Cooper in a negative sense, and that's your prerogative. And you can come on this podcast. Reds fan, you're invited to come and sit on this podcast. Get in touch, message me. Let's have you on, and we can have this out. Yeah, Reds fan, get yourself on this podcast.
Discuss it, not have it out. But
we'll have it out. No, we'll have it out. We'll have it out because that's what I say this podcast is all about. Controversial opinions. You're entitled to your opinion. Yeah. Club before clueless manager, always club before manager, always club before players. But you're invited. Come and join us, and let's have a debate and a conversation. And I'll listen to everything you've got to say. I might not agree, but we'll listen. But what I'm saying to you now is Steve Cooper deserves respect because without him, we would not be on the edge of Champions League football. We wouldn't be having these kind of conversations about shall we win the FA Cup or shall we win Champions League football. All right. So listen, I'm settling down now. I've got myself a little bit worked up there.
Back to Douglas Luiz.
Yeah, back to Douglas Luiz.
Back to Douglas Luiz. I think it'd be a great signing. We're going to have to wrap things up because we've gone way over. But it's all your fault, Raf, bringing up Steve Cooper's name.
Sorry.
Douglas Luiz, fantastic signing if we get him. But we're going to wrap up now. I've probably lost most of our fan base now. They're not going to come back and listen. We've lost all of our subscribers. They're all going to go, that guy with the white beard's an idiot. Danscape, wrap us up with some final thoughts.
Don't know how to follow this. Steve Cooper was quite a good manager, I thought. Anyway, I don't know. I feel like Douglas Luiz is a strange signing for us. Is all I would say. If he's that good, why is he not in the Juventus side? Number one. Ooh. And do we need to bring in a player of that kind of status at this point? So on that one, I would just question whether it's just like an agent-led one rather than we desperately need this player for this position. In terms of going into this Luton game, I think it will be feisty. But yeah, I think this cup run is still important to us. So if we can just get through this one and then we can progress into concentrating on the league for a little while, but then have both. We can potentially have both things if we can get through this.
Thanks very much, mate. Raf, a quick sec to say goodbye.
I can feel my mouth again. Joyous. Absolutely brilliant. No, absolutely great. I just, get the cup done, but I really look forward to chatting to you all on Sunday for what I actually genuinely think is probably the biggest game at the City Ground other than the semi-final of the playoff in the last 2 decades. I am buzzing for Sunday for us to chat about that.
Brilliant. Richard Spray, Oklahoma, give us your final thoughts, buddy.
So just, hey, as always, just grateful to be here. Grateful to have that bearded man to my left. So grateful for you guys as well. Grateful for this wonderful opportunity to share that passion that you just illustrated, right? Because this is where we are as a club. We're just all very, I think, energized by what we're seeing on the pitch. And it's just great to see these players that we've invested into continue to move forward and get better and better and better, which is exciting to think about, because you can imagine, what is Elliot Anderson going to look like in 2 years? What's Morgan Gibbs-White going to look like in 2 years? What's Murillo going to look like if we can keep him? I mean, it's just going to be spectacular what we can accomplish and under, our leadership. But yeah, just so excited. As Raf said, I can't wait for Liverpool, and I just can't feel any more confident than I do right now about what we can do on the pitch. So thanks, guys.
We are back on Sunday. We're going to be doing a kind of Luton review. Hopefully that's going to go the way we think it will go, and we'll keep that a little bit shorter. But we are going to be previewing Liverpool, which is kicking off next Tuesday under the lights at 7:45. Raf and Danscape will be with us. The cheese trader, Stu Freestone, is also going to be with us as well. And I hope you'll come and join us for Master Spray's birthday as well on Sunday. So we might have a little bit of a party. Everyone in the comments, thank you so much. All right. I want you to know how grateful we are for you watching along, for getting involved. We want to hear your opinions. Right. I'm not trying to shut people down. I'm just saying I don't agree with it. So if you've got controversial out there opinions, I'm just going to tell you I don't agree with it. But the seat is there for anybody that wants to come on and have a debate with us about something. We've always said that from day one. This is the place where we will open it up to you fans. This is a podcast for you guys. So I want to say it to Reds fan. Thank you for being in the comments. Thank you for watching. All right. Really appreciate it. Your time is really important to me. We support the same club. We're brothers, as far as I'm concerned. Or if you're a girl, we're brothers and sisters. But listen, thanks for being with us. Come and join us on Sunday night. Come on, you Reds. See you soon.